We're live.
And good afternoon. My name is Linda Jackson, and I'm the chair of the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee at Toronto Seniors Community Housing. And I'd like to welcome everyone who joins us today, members of the board, members of the committee, and members of tenants and members of the public who are joining us online. Um, it's spring. It doesn't feel like it outside, but welcome to our March 24th first spring meeting. I'm hoping that the sun will come back later on in the week. This is a busy month and an important month for many people, and I'd like to acknowledge that Ramadan is being observed throughout the month of March, and will end with Eid al-Fitr that goes from March 29th to April 1st. March is also Irish Heritage Month, Bangladeshi Heritage Month, Hellenic Month, and Persian Heritage Month. Today, March 24th, is International Day for the Right to the Truth concerning gross human rights violations and for the dignity of victims, which serves to honor the memory of victims of gross and systemic human rights violation. Tomorrow, March 25th, is Greek Independence Day, as well as International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade. And at the end of the month, March 31st, is the International Transgender Day of Visibility, as well as the National Indigenous Language Day. It's a busy month. On today's agenda, we will present our operational dashboard, have a communications update, and as well, we will have a report from the Community Safety Unit. We have no deputations on today's agenda. And now I will proceed to our next agenda item, which is the Land and African Ancestral Acknowledgement. Toronto Senior Housing acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. I'd also like to do the African Ancestral Acknowledgement, which again is particularly important this month. Toronto Seniors Housing acknowledges all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past. And for those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery, we pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. And I would like to acknowledge and thank the team at Toronto Seniors Community Housing for continuing to actually support many initiatives that bring some legs to these comments that we make at these acknowledgements, and encourage everyone to think about how they're contributing to this. It shouldn't just be words. All right, we'll now proceed to item 3, approval of the public meeting agenda. Does any board or committee member have any new business or amendments to the agenda? Brenda?
Just a question. I had a question about the rapid rehousing report. Should I do it as a new item or just under discussion of the minutes? It was just some information questions.
Why don't we do it with discussions and the action items, since it was actually discussed at the last one. So we'll make sure that you have that question.
Great, thanks.
Anything else that we'll add to the agenda? We'll make sure that we chat about that. Okay, so then may I have a committee member approve the agenda as presented? Jim and Fareed, thank you so much. Right, so Jim moved that and Fareed seconded it. So, with all in favor, be it resolved that the March 24th public meeting agenda as presented to QTE is approved. We'll now proceed to item 4, conflict of interest. Can I ask if anyone has any conflict of interest for today's meeting? Great, hearing none, we will move ahead for the approval of the public minutes of February 10th, 2025. Are there any amendments or changes to the public minutes of February 10th, 2025? All right, hearing none, I'll ask Jim and Fareed if you would be willing to move and second. Fareed moved, seconded by Jim. All in favor? Thank you so much. So again, be it resolved that the February 10th Q2E committee public minutes are approved as presented. And we'll now move to the action items. And I think this might be an area where we could actually add that one item since we chatted about it last time. Does that make sense, Grant or Brad? Or we could put it into the dashboard.
It's probably fine either way. Through the chair, it's fine either way.
Okay.
So if you'd like to take that now, I think that's fine.
Okay, sure. So it looks like we currently don't have any outstanding action items, but I think we could actually raise the question about the rapid rehousing here to Brenda.
Yeah, thank you. Just some explanation. The STAR system, this is like an assessment tool that we use. Is that used for all clients or just for rapid rehousing clients?
Yeah, great question, Brenda. So through the chair, it's only used for the rapid rehousing clients, Brenda.
Okay.
The only reason Housing Connections, Access to Housing, which used to be Housing Connections,
Yes.
they operate the wait list. So they are looking for eligibility of people before they place them on the housing wait list.
Right.
Through the Rapid Rehousing Initiative, these clients are used the STARS assessment through the City of Toronto.
So that's done at the point of application? Or is it done at the point that they are being referred to you?
It's done prior to the city staff referring them to the Rapid Rehouse program. Their eligibility is checked.
And is there any assessment tool that is used at the point that they're referred to you? Because the STARS assessment. Okay, so it might be.
We receive the output of the STARS assessment.
Okay.
As well as some financial information, and that's all we receive.
So the STARS assessment could be an older assessment. Could be a couple years. Could be a couple years. The STARS assessment could be a couple years old.
No, they're as soon as they pass the STARS assessment, they're put into the rapid rehousing pipeline.
Okay, but
there are people on that wait list for years. They're there for maybe 2 months.
Okay,
It's
so
rapid.
yes, I understand. So I'm still not clear. When is the STARS assessment done? That was done by the Access Housing people.
It's done by the city staff.
City staff.
The city staff, and then if they pass the STARS assessment, they are put into the Rapid Rehouse program and made eligible for an apartment.
Okay. And are we comfortable with that tool? Does it give us information that we need to know?
Yeah, through the chair. The tool and the use of it is one of the developments that's made the program more successful. It wasn't something in the original Rapid Rehousing program, but it's something that city staff and TSHC staff collaborated on to strengthen the program and strengthen the outcomes of success for clients that are put into the program.
Okay, and you're happy with it?
Yes.
Okay, that's good because it's always important to have current information in terms of staff planning and allocation of staff time. And the complex tenancies team, when do they get involved? At what stage?
So through the chair, the complex tenancies team gets involved within the first 3 months of housing.
Right.
And they will do a home visit with the newly housed person in order to assess the condition of the unit, speak to the person about how they're getting along with their social worker, and just ask a couple of in-depth questions that give us some insights as to that tenancy and how successful we believe it'll be, and if we need to escalate to the city to have additional interventions.
So do the city staff, I think you said it was a year, they continue contact with the tenant for a year, up to a year?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
and
not
that
city staff, it's an agency that the city has contracted.
agency contracted, yes. Yeah, which would be what, Reconnect? Or they're different?
Reconnect, Wood Green, depends on the area of the city.
Depends on the area of the city, I see. And are we happy with the frequency of their contact with the tenants?
Yeah, through the chair, we flagged a couple issues and the city staff they're really responsive with the agencies that they have under contract in order to address any concerns that we have.
Okay, so we then are dependent on that community agency to do their piece. of support.
Yes. And we
Okay.
have altered, sometimes the fit doesn't work, and we've had clients where they've changed agencies based on the recommendations that have come through us to the city.
Okay. Okay. Now, I'm asking these questions just in terms of deployment of staff resources and whether, you know, it puts an extra burden on our staff or the other agency, community agency. My personal experience has been that they didn't monitor the people, and that led to failure of placements, right? They weren't there rapidly for them, you know, they weren't widely available. So they're supposed to be doing visits weekly and they weren't. You know, so that's why I'm asking, because I want to make sure that we don't burden. Often agencies dump on other agencies. I just want to make sure that doesn't happen to us. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you. And it sounds like we're pleased with how things are going, but keep asking the questions, Brenda. And if there's questions that
I
you have
will.
in between, I think you could also reach out to Brad, because I know you have an interest, and we appreciate that, and making sure that these tenants are successfully
Yeah,
supported and that our staff is
exactly.
successfully supported. But so keep us in the loop. Looks like the other action items have all been completed. So I appreciate that. So with that, I think we will go on to the next item, which is our CEO report. And over to you, Tom. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Linda, and through the chair to the committee. Just a few items to update the committee on today. And just the first one is just a bit on a bit of work around NORC, the normally occurring retirement communities. We hear a lot about them, the NORC Innovation Center. It's just one that we want to share, which I just think it shows how the work, this kind of very progressive and integrated work, really intersects at various ways. And this is just really one example around transit. And a recent study coming out of the NORC Innovation Center at UHN, who we work with as well, just looked at public transit and the accessibility of Toronto seniors. And this was in conjunction with the Senior Services Long-Term Care Division of the city. And so, what they saw was just really the inadequate nature of the mobility needs in transit. And so there are key recommendations in terms of revising standards to accurately reflect seniors' limitations and expanding the community bus network, particularly for high-density senior areas like our TSHC buildings. And so the NORC Center is advocating for these recommendations, and then they are getting integrated in the City of Toronto Senior Strategy 3.0. So there's a lot of parts here, but I think it's really positive when we start to see how one supports the other, and us in terms of supports for our seniors. Also, just a bit of information just on the Economic Community Development Committee. It was, as you recall, that was a report from Toronto Seniors that went to that committee in October of 2024. And there was a motion from that report for city divisions through the leadership of the Community and Social Services Division of the city to look at what are some services from city divisions that could support our buildings, or also how do we help engage our tenants so that they can access those services in the community. And that report was the response to that motion. The report was to come to this committee today, but it did get delayed. So it is going to the ECDC committee on April 8th, so that we will have a report then we should have a report to our board then by the end of April. So just providing that update, it was going to be on today's agenda, but it's getting moved to April 29th. And just also for today, the CSU report, the Community Safety Unit, you'll be hearing from that later. From Alberton, the Senior Director of the Safety Unit, later in this meeting with a presentation. And we're really pleased to have them here. And because there was that period from, I guess, April to December where we weren't receiving information from data from the CSU. So that's been resolved. And so now they're going to be providing coordinated reports to this committee moving forward. So that'll be more timely and keep things up to date. And also just following up that, I believe it was at one of our previous committees around fire safety. and Fire Safety Month is coming up with the awareness in June. And so just to let this committee know that the Toronto Fire Services has requested our collaboration for Fire Safety Awareness Month and focus efforts on our seniors' housing and Toronto Fire Services have proposed safety events or presentations to all of our TSHC buildings, as well as 4 large-scale community safety nights. And so this is all positive. What we just need to look at is kind of coordinating with, TSHC and the Toronto Fire Services in terms of kind of access, feasibilities, logistics, and possibly funding for these events. So it is a positive commitment. We just have to understand how we can operationalize it within our buildings. And then just finally, and I think this is the final time that we will thank Arlene, one of our committees. This is officially, I think, her last board committee commitment. So Arlene, thank you so much. Couldn't miss that moment.
Thanks, Tom. Brenda?
Thanks, Tom. A question about the NORC relationships. Is there any thought of designating some of our buildings as NORC buildings? Because there are resources available to participants in this program, almost like a community development staff, to help with people coming together to manage their communities or their living environment. So is there a thought of maybe, I don't know, taking half a dozen of our buildings as sample NORC communities and working with NORC more practically?
Yeah, no, Arlene, do you want to take that?
So Brenda, great question. NORC is actually already in 4 of our buildings.
Good.
Those buildings
Okay.
have about 635 tenants, and their outreach program is right now positively affecting about 235 of those tenants. And they're working to strengthen their ambassador program, which is the primary work that NORC is funded to do. And in fact, I sat with them a couple of weeks ago on one of their ambassador program sites and learned a little bit more about the work that they're doing to strengthen community building within one of our sites at 98 and 100 Cabell. And so that work, they would like to expand that work in 2025 and beyond.
So extend it, meaning include more buildings, more locations?
Yeah. Yes, and so one of the criteria for choosing to be a NORC site is that you have to have a minimum number of participants in a building, a minimum number of tenants wishing to participate in the building, and commit to the 9 months of training that they provide, which is a monthly, build on.
Yes.
And so it's not in all buildings is there capacity for that. So that's
No, I understand. Yeah.
So that's part of what they're going to be working on as they look to put it into other buildings. Where is their capacity from a tenant engagement perspective to bring 5 or more people together to be able to support a NORC ambassador program?
Okay, and the 4 buildings that were chosen, was there criteria by which they were chosen, or is that something?
Yeah, I think some of it was based on location and trying to, figure out what different communities needs. Like we've got one community in the East End, one in the West End, one in the North, and there's one more in the Northeast, I believe. And so they focus on being able to where those buildings have capacity to absorb. That was their initial work around finding ambassadors is where were there people that were interested in getting involved.
So did we supply those buildings, or they had done it independently of us when they first?
That happened. Yeah, that happened prior to me, to be honest, Brenda.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I think that might have been. I'm not sure, to be honest. I wouldn't want to comment appropriately on that.
All right, could at some point, not now, but at some point, could you let us know what those 4 buildings are? And then if they do expand, what additional buildings? Just trying to get a sense of the sampling, either by district, by region.
So one is we've got 133 Merrill, which their program has halted a little bit there because there's some capacity issues. 828 Kingston Road.
828 Kingston Road, yeah.
28.
Yeah.
2835 Lakeshore in the west. 98 and 100 Cabell.
What was the last one?
98 and 100 Cabell.
Maybell?
Kate
Cavell.
Cavell, CAPELL.
Okay.
Maybe something we could
That's fine.
do in the
put
future,
it in the
Brenda,
minutes.
is have a more thorough presentation, because I think that
Yeah.
not everybody is as familiar with the naturally occurring retirement community concept and how it might interconnect with
Yes.
the work that we're doing. So maybe
Yes.
we'll just put that on a future agenda.
Great idea. Great idea. Thank you. And just
Other
put it.
questions for Tom?
And oh, sorry, one last, the CSU, sorry, the ECDC, sorry. April 8th is the date for the full report. So we're hoping to get some sort of response from the various divisions as to how they can cooperate with us at the April 8th meeting, Tom, am I correct?
Through the chair to Brenda. So the April 8th is the ECDC committee meeting. We have had they have kind of socialized that report, reviewed that report with us. So we do know that there are areas that they're looking to support us. They were just cautious that they wanted the committee to hear about it first before we share
Sure.
it with our board. Yeah, so there is very kind of there are specific actions.
Okay, and we'll hear about that at our board meeting or?
We can do it we should, if everything rolls out as the city plans, it should be the April 28th board meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Great, thanks. Great question. All right, thanks, Tom. And I know we're looking forward to hearing more about the safety report later on in the agenda. But first, if there aren't any other questions, no other hands, I will pass it over we're going to go to item 8, which is the operational dashboard. And I'll get Brad to take that one on.
Thanks, Linda. So through the chair, this is the regular operational dashboard that we go over many times. Just due to some of the seasonality, and now that we've had this view for a little while, this month we've included averages for you on this first page. So it'll give you a little more perspective as to how we did in 2024 versus how we're tracking. So things like the arrears have continued to fall from an average last year of 1.52 million, and at the end of February we were down under 4 at 1.38. The vacancy rate has gone up a little bit. That's due to an increase in the number of units that have been vacated over the winter months. And then some of the other ones, you'll see some odd trends, and that's mainly due to staff vacations. They weren't available for tenants, so you catch up in January or February with the tenants. And then the other thing with regards to the work orders and the pest management is that during the Christmas season, we go to non-essential work. We verify with people that they want us in their homes during the holidays before we go in. So a lot of that gets deferred till January, February. So this will help you just understand how the numbers track against the normal averages that we have as we go through the first quarter and so on. Next slide. So with regards to the arrears, as I mentioned, they continue to drop down to $1.38 million. The other thing that's a noticeable drop is we were down 10,000 last month, just in the number of people who are under the arrears collection process. And this ensures that our staff are getting to deal with people fast. As soon as we recognize that there's a problem with the rental account for that unit, our staff are on top of it and dealing with it, because the faster we can deal with tenants and get them into the arrears collection process and support them, the more likely it is that repayment plan will be successful and the tenancy will continue. Next page. As mentioned, the vacancies went up a little bit. It's normal for this time of year. It's a trend that we see every year in the January, February, March kind of realm. We do maintain an average. We turn over units 65 days after somebody vacates, which is 20 days above our average when we present you the LHC, the other local housing net providers within the sector in Ontario. So this is just a little bit of a catch up from the number of people who are vacating during the winter months. And you can see we had 48 people move in, but we had 94 people move out, which is double our average for the rest of the year. Next page. In regards to the work orders, again, the percentages look off, they look weird, but again, as I mentioned in January, we're really catching up with a lot of the things that were deferred over the month of December, just trying to be respectful of people and homes over the holiday season. But you can see that the actual completion percentage, the The days that we're doing it, we're far exceeding last year. We're up in that 96.5% range when our staff are required to complete a work order within a unit. Next slide. This is the administrative tickets. Again, the numbers, staff are completing them almost at 80%. You can see on the right-hand side who's dealing with tenants, who's interacting with them and resolving their issues, as well as what the top 5 issues that our tenants are presenting to our staff with and what they're asking for help in resolving. Next slide. And then the pest management. It's trending down. We're looking to see those trends continue. But again, as I mentioned earlier, we do defer a lot of that maintenance over the month of December. So a lot of it gets caught up. We work to get caught up on that. And we should see some normalizing as far as the trends go. Next slide. Sorry. Any questions on the dashboard or any of the slides?
Brenda, and then I have a question as well. Go ahead, Brenda.
Just a quick question. What is if you can, in a few words, just tell me the difference between what the tenant service coordinator does versus the, what is it, SS?
Yeah,
Senior service, yeah. Is one more administrative? Is one more, like, just give me a sense of that.
Yeah, great question. It was one of the things that the integrated service model was for us to put staff in the building. So the senior services coordinators are the staff that work in the buildings, and they're in the building day to day. They're there when the tenants come down to the lobby and have a question or need help with something, or need help working with Service Canada. The tenant service administrators are back office. They work at one of the 4 regional offices, and their function and their interaction with the tenants is more of the RGI administration side of it. They're calculating and doing things like that. So if you can imagine, the senior services coordinator is gathering the documents to assist the tenant in having their rent calculated. And then after that, those documents are being sent to the tenant services administrator to have that actual rent calculated and that communicated back to the tenants.
Okay. So the senior service are more hands-on referrals to community agencies, what have you. Tenant service is more the administrivia, so to speak.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you then.
I had a quick question, Brad. Interesting around the increase in vacancies that happen more cyclical. Do we track where the reason for people leaving our units at an aggregate level?
That's a good point.
Through the chair, yes, we do. Happy to put together some of those numbers and send it out to the committee, and can give you a full breakdown of why people leave. As long as they tell us, we do have a rather large number that's undisclosed.
Yeah.
But we look at the data. And it's one of the factors that we report to the local housing corporations is our move out rate and how we can prolong tenants and bring that rate of vacancy down as far as people leaving TSHC.
Right. Yeah. No, it would be interesting to know if, how many people have moved into other levels of care, or, or if there's a group of people. I can't imagine people leaving on their own accord if they're looking for just generally for other housing, but it'd be interesting to know. So that would be great, Brad. It's, if maybe at a future meeting. Thank you.
It's also,
Yeah.
also, Linda, be useful to know.
Councillor Crisanti has his hands up, Madam Chair.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I'll get him. Can I get Councillor Crisanti first, Brenda? Councillor Crisanti?
Yeah, right.
I was thinking you might have a question about vacancies, because that's, I got it before you this time.
Actually, I do, Linda, but I'm going to start with, if I could, a couple of questions. Can we go back to that slide that spoke to the administrative tickets? Just want to have, I don't have that in front of me, but I have some questions about that. I saw that slide. And no, the one just before this one. No, that's not it either. So there's a slide that showed work orders and administrative tickets side by side.
Or the first one.
I think it was the first one.
Maybe, yeah, maybe it was the first.
There it is. Yeah.
There you go. That's the one. So question now, an administrative ticket is as a result of that work order that's been issued, correct?
So an administrative, through the chair, councillor, an administrative ticket is a request of more administrative nature. It's generally to do with something that the senior services coordinators would receive. So it would be request for a referral to a personal support worker. It would be for asking for assistance in dealing with CRA due to pension changes. Whereas the work orders are the ones that are submitted for the actual physical apartment relating to my toilet's not working, my sink needs to be unplugged, my closet door doesn't close properly.
Okay, so they have two very different purposes here.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble hearing you as well. I can't find my volume button here, but okay.
Yeah,
so
Brad,
I'm-
we lost you a little bit there.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm having trouble hearing as well.
Me too. Me too.
So all right, I'm going to move on over to arrears. Can we jump to the arrears slide? You were just there a moment ago.
Okay.
So we do. Tell me a little bit about this number. You know, we're collecting our own rent 100% across the board.
We collect rent on behalf of Toronto Community Housing. The rent is still paid to Toronto Community Housing, but our staff are the ones that collect it and deposit it and work with the tenants if they have outstanding balances.
And it goes to Toronto Community Housing. And where do they? Because again, we're still working through our agreements and so on. And so that money goes into whose account? Don't we have our own accounts already set up?
There's a reconciliation process that happens where the money is sent from Toronto Community Housing over to Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation.
Okay, but at some point we collect and we direct deposit ourselves once we have an agreement in place, correct? Or no?
Yes, Ken. There's a limitation on the system that we use for tenancy management that we're trying to work with Toronto Community Housing to resolve that would allow us to collect our own rent and have it be made payable to Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. We just haven't been able to get that project completed.
All right. So there's currently 1.3 million or almost 1.4 million in arrears.
Correct.
How are we working through all of these arrears right now to improve that number?
Yeah, great question, Councillor. So if you look at the chart on the right-hand side, it'll tell you where all the dollar figures actually lay. So out of that 1.3 million, there's 700,000 that is in either a mediated agreement. It's with the Commissioner of Housing, their office, in an agreement to be repaid to Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. Or there's 310,000 almost that's sitting with the Landlord Tenant Board and orders that we've received from the Landlord Tenant Board. There's another 25,000 that we're just waiting for a court hearing date on. And then the last is 151,000 where we just initiated the arrears collection process, which is the notice at the N4 notice that we issued to tenants.
Okay, and I understand it's a very, very sensitive discussion because look, we don't want to, if we can't come to an agreement of some sort, we can't evict anyone. Once you evict someone, then what happens? They go into a different type of shelter. Have we been in a situation where we've had to actually evict? Because then, we've already got a homeless issue, a housing issue, and homeless people. What happens in that scenario?
So through the chair, we work with the city and we prepare what's known as a soft landing. So you're correct, Councillor. We would work with the tenant and the city staff to find the person a bed in an available shelter. Unfortunately, it is a requirement of an independent living facility such as Toronto Seniors Housing that you do pay your rent. We have repayment agreements that last extended periods of time. We ensure that they're fair. It is one of the reasons that the Commissioner of Housing was developed and is in place with Toronto Seniors to ensure that we're treating tenants in a fair, respectful way and that there's that third-party evaluation of it. But unfortunately, sometimes it does result in somebody having their tenancy terminated. I will say that TSHC has a 1%, below 1%, it rounds up to 1% eviction rate. So it is a minimally used tool when it comes to collecting rent. We are able to ensure that tenants repayment agreements are up to date. And that's one of the reasons that we push for such quick intervention with our tenants, because it is a lot easier for somebody to pay off 300 or 400 than it is by the time that amount gets to 5,000 or 6,000.
Yeah, I fully agree, and that's good. That's comforting to hear. Last thing we want to do is evict anyone. And now let's jump over to the vacancy one, which is always of interest to me. Trying to, oh no, can't see that bottom number. The total number of, so we're at 261 vacant units in total currently.
Correct. At the end of February, Councillor, there were 261 vacant units. And of those units, the column gives you the status of it. So 33 of them have already been accepted by people to move in, but their lease date was most likely March the 1st. So there is somebody moving into that unit. It's just not by the end of December. End of February was their lease effective. And then you can see that there's 84 units with the City of Toronto centralized wait list, where we're currently matching them with prospective tenants.
So what does it mean, central waitlist 84, that they're waiting to come in?
They have been sent to the city centralized wait list.
Okay.
So from there, access to housing notifies applicants of the availability, and then they liaise with our staff to fill the vacancy.
Well,
So they've been sent out to people who've been on the wait list for 5 to 10 years, and we're just waiting for an acceptance.
So if I'm reading this correctly, the problem with that wait list is if I go back to line 1, which says vacant and ready, there's only 1 unit and we have 84 people waiting.
Sorry, Councillor.
So no, I'm asking.
84 are ready units that have been sent to the centralized wait list. We have 1 unit that is vacant and ready that has not been sent to the centralized wait list.
All right, that's what that means. All right, now to the next line, rapid rehousing, maintenance, 67 units, I guess, waiting for maintenance. What's the turnaround time for that?
Yeah, great question. So we're about 65 days from somebody vacating a unit to reoccupancy at TSHC. And the average for our industry is about 20 days more than that. So we exceed the industrial average by almost over a half a month. That's a revolving door. So those ones that are under maintenance, those are people who vacated December 31st to probably February 1st, and we're currently working in order to paint and renovate the unit. There's some other things through the city's municipal licensing and standards department that we have to have done before we can legally re-rent a unit and reoccupy it.
Okay, I'd be interested in seeing what the 67 units and the maintenance issues related to each one of those units, because I would suspect, okay, some may have more serious maintenance issues that could take a little longer. Some could be turned around relatively quick, depending on what it is. You got contractors in place. We could turn around from day 1. Here's the unit number. Here's a dozen unit numbers. Have them ready by next week, so we can house people faster. What can we do to expedite this so we can move quicker and clean up the 67, or at least make that turnaround time continue to improve? I don't necessarily want to compare myself to the national average, because if we're still 2 months away from getting something done, I think there's still room for improvement.
Yeah, agreed. And it's something that we look for efficiencies in a lot. The one thing is, and as I was mentioned during my report, the month of January and February and March, we received double the people vacating units than we do every other month of the year. So that's why you see it went up to 94. So if of the 94 people that moved out in January, we actually only have 67 of those units, or sorry, of the 94 people that vacated in February, we only have 67 of those units still under maintenance. So some of them already have been turned and sent out. It's also a service that we work with Toronto Community Housing on. Turning over of units is a capital expense. So we work with our colleague TSHC in order to get those units, and we leverage TSHC vendors and contracts in order to turn those units over.
So it's not within our control. It's within Toronto Community Housing who dictates the time frame, in a sense.
Correct. We developed a scope for a unit to be turned over, whether it needs new flooring, new closet doors, a new kitchen, what have you. But then we work with Toronto Community Housing in order to have that work completed.
So that's why we can't.
Well, is this an aspect of this agreement that we're
Mhm.
negotiating, that we're gonna ensure that we
Yeah.
negotiate and take that away and make sure it's fully in our control? So we're negotiating that currently?
I
Yeah,
think
so
Tom
I'm
wanted
gonna-
to say something. Go ahead, Tom.
I'm gonna jump in on this one because I think there needs to be, like, I mean, I'm just gonna say that the kind of the context around this is you're talking about like 260 units out of almost 15,000, right? Or 14 to 15,000 units. And so there is some, I would say, negligible gains to be made in this area. But I think this would be a question of kind of value resources being put in for what is going to be the return. So we can move this down somewhat, but I know my time at City Housing Hamilton, where we had control of unit turnover, where we had maintenance staff in the units, we did not achieve this level of turnaround time or vacancy level. And so there, yes, we always want to improve that, but I wouldn't want to set up the expectation that we can drive this down much further because it's low.
Yeah, and Tom, I guess I'm just focused on this because right now across the city of Toronto, likely in most wards across the city,
Yeah.
including mine, we're under pressure to provide housing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I look at a number like 261, my God, even though it's a small drop in the bucket compared to our total numbers, but it's a big number compared to the need that we have across the city. I'm just looking at it from the perspective of, wow, what would it be? It'd be great to house next week an additional 200 people because these housing units became available, and now it's somewhat not totally in our control, and so the waters are a bit muddled, and this is why I'm just never been happy about the fact that we're not we haven't arrived at an agreement yet. There's things that are not in our control. I really like to see us push a lot harder in this area. And I'd love to see that number get to 50% of what it is now so we can house more people. If there's any reasonable way of getting there and managing that, I'm sure we have the people resources and we have a lot of bright people in our organization. I think we could do that and house more and more people quicker, faster. So it takes a bit of a pressure off because I'm going through it right now. We're all under pressure. My colleagues at City Council are under pressure.
Yeah, I see your hand, Brenda.
I guess sorry, I just want
Go
to,
ahead,
from my perspective, I wouldn't necessarily, like, if we're looking at those priority areas around our agreements and to improve, this would not necessarily be one that would percolate to the top for us. If you can only imagine, like, if you're going to look at bringing on your own maintenance staff to start to do this work, getting places to supply, bringing in supplies to the buildings, training the people, getting the transport, how they're going to move across the building. So right now, TCHC is doing this through contractors. So is there a way that we can expedite those contractors around standards, around maintenance? Yes. And that's something that we want to look at around those maintenance standards and turnaround time. But I think that this is something through our work and through which TCHC, which I think the improvements could be made, but it doesn't necessarily have to be part of that agreement. So I'm just trying to kind of balance out how we move forward, understanding this incredible pressure. So hear that, and then let's see where we can make those gains to council and the committee to get this number down. What would be possible?
All right, thank you. And last question on the pest. I think it's slide 7, pest control. 7. Next slide.
Yeah, I think there's another one. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, thank you. So we've done better and in Feb. How many? Oh, there. I think I'm looking at the answer right now. We have 179 declared pest free. Am I dreaming in Technicolor when I envision our buildings being 100% pest free all the time? And what do we need to do to get there?
Through the chair, councillor, there is no apartment building, condo, housing provider in the world that is pest free. Prior to coming to TSHC, I worked in multi-million-dollar condos in the city of Toronto, and they have just as much pest infestations as we do.
Quite so much.
Yeah, and like, I know it's a real challenging problem. It's just terrible that so many people need continue to live under these unacceptable conditions. And my office continues to get calls, the cases that I got to deal with one-on-one to help people. A lot of our time and resources go into that, and we're always happy to help everyone. I find that once my office gets involved, the service level gets to a whole new level and things get looked after. Which is a whole nother argument. Why does it have to
Be
get
you.
his
Yes.
office,
Yeah. Yeah.
when it's done at the management level to begin with, and people get frustrated? Keep in mind that when we get a call in the councillor's office, it's a desperate call. It's a call of last resort, because people don't know where to go. They're lost and they're desperate. I really want to see massive improvement in this area. No, we can't get to zero like overnight, and well, maybe ever, but 179 units out of what, 1,200 roughly, or is and I wouldn't say that's something to celebrate necessarily. An area that I really like to see us focus more aggressively on, proactively, and ensure that we get cooperation from the tenants, because I know that is challenging. I find that myself at my end, that when I find out what happens, the tenants don't always cooperate the way they need to. So it does take everyone's cooperation to take a building to a much better level than it currently is right now when it comes to pest control. Thank you, Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you, and thank you for being there in the community to help people when they do call you, and thank you. I wonder, Brad, the one thing I was thinking about with the counselor's comments was during those months where we know that there's going to be like a peak, maybe that's a time where we, like if every January, that we actually work with TSHC a little bit around a little bit more resources, kind of predicting it. And thanks, Tom, for your comments in terms of following up on some of these. I think they're aspirational goals of just actually seeing even a little bit of a improvement in areas that are really important to our tenants.
Linda, Floyd had his hand up.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I don't want to belabor the point, but I think I sort of see where Councillor Crisanti is coming from. I mean, I understand that, we're above the national average or whatever the average is, but I think the situation in the City of Toronto is different from the rest of the municipalities across the province. And if there is a way for us to set some kind of standard or some kind of benchmark, and maybe there's a way to triage these maintenance so we're not sort of lumping them all in the same category. Some might need major structural issues, if that's the correct word, and some might need, regular cosmetic housekeeping stuff. So, is there a way for us to enhance the or sort of shorten the timeline it takes to get these things done by doing that, understanding that the TSHC is the one who does it on our behalf? But I don't think we're advocating here for bringing in maintenance and all that sort of stuff in-house. This is about working with the third party to try and enhance the standards and see if there's a way for us to expedite some of this work.
Yes, yes. So just a reminder to the committee that what the city has, that the standard that it's set for the city is a 2% vacancy, right? So I think that this would, as we move forward in terms of kind of ratcheting or lowering that number, which we want to do, and if it's going to require resources, then we will be talking to the city as well, about, okay, this is, we want to move to this lower threshold, it is going to result in, potentially, these kind of resource implications. I don't know that yet, but we are working below the standard that the city has set for us.
Yeah, I was speaking about the maintenance, Tom, not talking about the vacancies.
Yeah, but the fact that we're turning over those, right, those units helps to keep the vacancy down, right? Turning over those units faster and then the filling them would even bring down the vacancy rate.
Yeah.
But there's a correlation.
Thank you. Last question, Brenda.
Quickie. Counselor, it's really important that you speak up because you are a real front line here. And I think I value your comments because you're seeing this day in and day out, and it's good for you to speak up with these concerns. So puts us a little in touch. Secondly, can we go back to that slide on the vacancies again? Yes, if in a sense, if you look at this, there aren't that many that are really vacant because they're either about ready to be picked up, right? I mean, not to give you some comfort here. You know, the wait list, well, that's just a matter of weeks and months before there's action on that. So those 84. Rapid rehousing, are we holding those 38 or those are 38 that have been assigned? Right? I don't know the answer to that. Brad?
Through the chair, those are units that have been assigned to the rapid
Okay.
housing.
So, and
One
transfer,
thing when you're looking at it is this is a revolving door. Just
exactly.
because a unit was available, it's not the same 42 or 38 month to month.
Yes. So I guess what I'm pointing out is that of these 261, significant percentage of them are basically going to be filled within the next, 4 to 6 weeks, so to speak. So in a sense, they're not really vacant because they're just being, worked on, and they're in different time slots. Now, I
Sorry,
think,
Brenda.
I think there can be improvements, like the maintenance ones, those waiting for maintenance. That's really, I think, the big area that people are concerned about. And that's where I imagine the real delays are happening because you're having to wait on contractors. Am I correct on that?
Correct, and there's a lot of custom millwork in these units.
Exactly.
Covered the new vanities and things like that.
And my last point is basically, I imagine that a certain percentage of our units are in bad shape by the time the person moves out. So I think that's the missing piece here in terms of our knowledge base, is how badly damaged was that unit? And in which case that may explain some of the delays, because it will take, if you're talking custom millwork, well, you're talking weeks right there just for the custom millwork, So I just think, in a sense, a little explanatory thing for how I understand it is, it seems to me, while yes, there's always improvements and we should look at that, but I think I can understand Tom's point here about in terms of industry norms and standards, but just the practicality of how do you get, tradespeople to turn things on a dime, which we all know they don't necessarily do. So those are my only comments, but I appreciate people's comments there, and I think it's wise that we keep our eyes on it, eyes and ears on it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that was robust conversation. And just one other point, I wouldn't want to actually shortchange the way the unit is presented to the new tenant.
Yeah.
Having had a mother moving into a seniors building, once you're in there, it's much better if things are actually in good shape when the person moves in, and as opposed to actually, having to then have all kinds of people coming in afterwards. So I'm hoping that that people are pleased with the experience as they move in. All right. So if there aren't any other questions, we will now move on. That was for information, but oh, sorry, Jim, go ahead. Go ahead, Jim.
I'd just like to make a comment about the waiting time before tenants move in, getting the unit prepared properly. I was rehoused here from the fire that happened on George Street.
Yeah.
When it was still under control of Toronto Community Housing. They had 17 days to prepare the unit. And I got a call on the Friday before I was to move in on the Monday to tell me the unit wasn't ready. And that I was going to have to take something in North York. So I said, no, I'll stay in a shelter until the unit's ready. I got a call back a half hour later saying the unit will be ready on Monday. So I came here. They were just starting the work, saying that, well, you're going to have to come back. You can move in a couple of days. So when I moved in, the work had just been completed. Nothing was done with the bathtub with big skip out of the bottom of the tub. There was calcium buildup all around the faucet. The toilet wouldn't flush because they'd been throwing stuff down the toilet. I went over to the superintendent on George Street, who came over and helped me get the toilet working. and helped me move the refrigerator and the stove into place, but nobody would help with the cleanup. When I contacted the cleaning lady, she said, well, I'm not cleaning it up. So I cleaned up all of the sawdust, everything else. And so I would like to be sure that we are applying those standards before we allow people to move in. Because I see that the units are being prepared here now are beautiful. If the tub's needed, they replace it. If the cupboards are needed, they replace them. And I want to make sure that continues.
Thanks, Jim.
So that people don't like I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what was going through my mind as we were speaking too. We don't want to. It's good to have perspectives from all. Thank you, Jim. This was a really good conversation. All right, thanks, Brad. Brad, your report always leads us to good conversation, and thank you for your willingness to actually hear us, and we'll keep a close eye on all of this going forward. I think if there aren't any other questions, no other hands up. All right, then we will move on to the communications update from Arlene, and I'll pass it over to Arlene for the last time. I don't believe it. I'll see you again.
We'll meet again.
Thank you, Linda. And can you hear me? You can hear me okay? Great, thank you. I wanted to first start by thanking and recognizing the great work that the communications team at Toronto Seniors Housing does.
Arlene, sorry, you're a little bit quiet.
Yeah. Can you get the microphone closer to you?
Move down here. Is that better?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, excellent. Let's start again. I wanted to start by thanking the communications team for all the work that they do to support the corporation, both internally and externally. Under the leadership of Wendy Dobson as the manager of communications, they have done a tremendous amount of work over the last couple of years. I wanted to just go through some of their achievements in 2024 and the plan 25. There's lots of information on all these slides, so I won't be touching down on all of them, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. The tremendous support they offered to Community Connect Plus and the Community Activity Fund Communications in 2024, as well as introducing a new product. It's a bi-monthly update for volunteers so that they know what's happening in the corporation, and also information that's coming to us from the city that's useful for tenants. We include that there. They've also been very, very involved. Wendy's been very involved in the team in trying to shore up our staff recruitment to grow the staff table from 8 to 24 members. Our staff recruitment netted us 45 applicants that are interested in joining staff, which is wonderful. And it was a lot of effort on behalf of the comms team to be sending out information weekly and just doing as much promotion as they could. So I wanted to recognize that work for 2024. And into 2025 as well. And then the tenants really appreciate getting recognition for their volunteer work. And all the tenants that were volunteers in 2024 got personalized notes from Tom and certificates. And I tell you, when I go out and I do regional meetings or I just meet with tenants one-on-one, they're so very appreciative that we notice the work that they're doing on their own time as volunteers to support each other and the work within the corporation. And finally, on this slide, I just wanted to just touch down on the work we did with the mayor. She loved us so much, she came back again this year. And so in 2024, she did 4 visits, and in 2025, she scheduled 9. Really good relationship with the mayor's office in terms of executing visits for her during Lunar New Year with the Chinese community. So those are some of the key achievements as it relates to tenants in 2024. On our staff, which is on the next slide, really I just wanted to touch down on the amount of support that the team does relative to corporate and departmental campaigns, which means really supporting things like making sure that staff are aware of what's happening with our ITS systems, any introduction of new work that's coming through people in culture, or support for business strategy and policies are changing, the team fully engages within the organization to help support that work, along with all the other work that's cited here in terms of what was done to support staff communications. The writing is all done internally, the team really enjoys doing things like the staff bulletin. We have about a 95% click rate into our staff bulletin every month, which is quite incredible. A lot of internal communications do not get that, but the writing is really great because they focus on doing profiles of staff, making sure that staff are getting recognition when tenants have provided recognition, that gets showcased in there. And then if we're doing any other programs like United Way and things like that, that's a source of information for them in the staff bulletin. In terms of public communications on the next slide, the team focused on building out some building profiles in 2024 and some pages relative to tenant experience and some other program areas. And they also updated the policies pages so that it's easier to navigate, as well as updates for the board and staff. If we move to the next page, it talks a little bit about public work that they did. They were really on top to help us get through our first ONFA conference, our first actual conference of any kind. We had a good showing at ONFA and had some good follow-up with people who are interested in the work that Toronto Seniors Housing is doing. So the team was very instrumental in making sure that our story got told. They also helped coordinate the On the Home podcast that Tom did, and a Save Our Seniors documentary that was done in the community.
Yeah.
Finally, on the next slide, I just wanted to touch down on the Connecting with the CEO tour. When Tom returned in April of last year, that tour was rebooted, and it's really continuing to be well received by the tenants. It started off as what we called a listening tour in 2022 to 2023, and the tenants really appreciated being heard by Tom, the tour continues, and they still really like the fact that Tom comes out, he sits with them, the comms team goes out, and our videographer, digital specialist, Nat, goes in and does photos and videos in order to capture those moments and those conversations from time to time, so that we have real materials to work with when we do our communications. We try not to use stock photography whenever possible. If we move to the next slide in terms of translation and interpretation, we've got in 2024, we had 150 interpreters in corporate and regional events, which is quite a lot considering the year before it was 59 that we had access. We really almost tripled the engagement through the use of interpreters. And we continue to translate senior speak into 6 languages. And then the team also held consultation for the new translation and interpretation policy that will be coming forward to committee and board for approval later this year. And then on our ideas work, the team has been very instrumental in supporting the work that Carol's team does in leading the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility program in supporting the Black History Month, and as well Pride Season, where there was some really great presentations around staff actually around inclusivity at Toronto Seniors, how everyone is being accepted and everyone is being represented in the conversations. And we had a really amazing town hall last year where staff were talking about their pride with the rest of the staff population. So if we move to the work that we're going to be doing in 2025, we will be taking a data-informed approach to continuing to build out our communications. The team relies on feedback that they get from Community Connect Plus and the tenant volunteers, as well as various consultations and Tom's visits with tenants and staff. And we also rely on the Tenant Support Center data by which to figure out what are the things that are important to tenants in terms of how many calls are coming in on what topics that we might need to put up new posters or help to provide additional information to the operations team, maybe a Q&A to support the volume of calls that might be coming into the Tenant Support Center, so that we're helping to equip staff to better support tenants. If you move to the next slide. Hold on. In 2025, we will work on building up our tenant welcome, launching the tenant welcome package. It has been a work in progress for some time. And the package will be available in several languages to support tenants that are moving into the building. And that package will also include a document that we provided as part of our ECDC report. It was the building profiles that we did that had, in your building, you will find these people doing these programs. That work is going to be repurposed to be part of the tenant welcome package, so that if I'm a new tenant, I know what's available in my building. That's on the tenant side. And then on the staff side, looking at the launch of an intranet refresh, so that there's a good navigatable space for staff to find information that they need to work in a more timely manner. So next slide, please. Is that it? And then in the corporate communications and external communications space, we will continue to support the work of the idea strategy, which is is coming to the board for final approval, and perhaps looking to support a new quality improvement project. And then on the public external side, we will look at doing more enhanced partnership communications. Right now, to be the way we work, we speak with partners mostly at our partnership table, or we send communications out from time to time. It's not as well coordinated as our tenant communications. So that's an area for improvement for us in 2025. And then wanting to continue our work to participate in public forums, such as ONFA and other places, to start to develop a reputation as a thought leader in seniors housing. I believe that is the end of our presentation. Before I wrap up, I wanted to also extend my gratitude to the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee, particularly to Linda for her leadership and the grace that she always shows in bringing our reports forward and supporting us in these conversations. So thank you, Linda, and to the rest of the committee. Thank you to the board. That has always been very gracious and supportive of the work we do in the engagement, partnership, and communication space. And also particular thanks to my colleagues in the leadership team and all of the staff that are part of the leadership team for all the support they've offered while I've been in this role.
Thanks so much, Arlene. And it's great to see that we've got a good plan going forward. And I like the idea of the data informed. I'm thinking about like the tenant, when you go in on your listening tours, Tom, like now actually having a bit more I think now you're probably actioning on the listening, and that would be great to actually see how we're proceeding with that. But thank you very much, Arlene. Any questions, comments? Oh, yeah.
Just a question about, and it may not be here, so tell me if it isn't. Questions about our partnerships with community agencies. Well, is that under a communication rubric, or is that more under?
Yeah, I think that's not under this report.
Okay.
Arlene wears like many hats in
Yes,
the
I
report.
know.
I
Yes,
know
yeah.
that we will continue to talk about that with the new director coming in as well.
Okay, so the partnership conversation, we can wait till what committee handles that?
It's our committee, but
It
I
is
think
your
that
committee. Okay.
it will be an ongoing agenda item is what I would
Yeah.
suggest.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So on behalf of our committee, thank you. I don't see any other hands up. So, and I know people are.
Hand is up.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Free. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to also kind of pass on our gratitude to Arlene for the work that she and her team has done on the communication side.
Yes,
And this report is certainly an indication of how busy they were. The only point I want to make, though, is that, I mean, I think what we should try and also capture some of the more strategic comms objectives. So this is a good inventory of all the things that we have done, and it's quite a lot. But I'd like to see also how have we kind of influenced the strategic considerations we're looking at. And I think there are a couple here. One is obviously the amount of people who applied to be staff representatives is I guess, an indication of engagement, as well as the number of clicks that we had on the website. But there might be 2 or 3 higher order strategic communications objective that's related to our mandate that perhaps we can try and measure rather than simply and that's more perhaps qualitative than quantitative, but I think it's important for us to measure how well we're doing in these areas by focusing a bit less on the number of events and more on the objectives. In the DEI piece, for example, it's great for us to have all these celebration of special days and special months and special events. But are we making a difference in the workplace in terms of the inclusion and diversity and creating that sense of empowerment and sense of belonging? That's what I think is perhaps a bit more critical from my perspective than simply the articulation of the events that has been done.
Thank
Good
you.
point.
Good
Good point.
feedback.
Thanks, Fareed. Good feedback, and I think it speaks to the maturity of our organization now in terms of what we want to amplify in our communication. So that's great. Any other questions, comments? Well, once again, thank you, Arlene, for putting us in a good place going forward, and we look forward to continuing focus on our communications at this committee, and we will actually talk about partnerships and other strategic goals. So thank you very much. So with that, I think that we are going to move to our last item, which is a report from our community safety unit. And this was actually a request from this committee to have a report. And I think Grant and Alan Britton from community safety, and I think TSHC is going to handle this report. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Linda. So through the chair, I'll introduce this, and unfortunately, Alan Britton is not available to be at the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee today, but another member of the Community Safety Unit, Mona Batani, is on the call. Mona is the Senior Manager of Operations with the Community Safety Unit, and Mona will be able to assist with this as well. I just want to set some context with this item, and thank you, Linda. So there's Mona just turned on the camera. Hi, Mona. With regards to, as we know, community safety and overall safety and security has been a priority area for Toronto seniors housing. It's articulated in our strategic directions, and the report before you is the first report of this level of detail from the Community Safety Unit. We appreciate them putting it together a report that is specific to TSHC's portfolio of buildings and what the experience is in Toronto seniors housing. This report and the level of detail that's before you, just for context, is similar to what is prepared and provided to Toronto Community Housing for the other buildings that this Community Safety Unit supports more broadly, or TSHC. And in this report, this is really an expansion upon the type of data that this committee has seen through our dashboard. And so Tom referenced a little bit of that earlier on in his remarks. And we are looking forward to having quarterly reports similar to this from the CSU. In the report itself, there's some overall stats around performance and activities, things like calls for service, some of the proactive work that's going on that the Community Safety Unit participates and supports. Then more specifics around some of the criminal activities and criminal activities against people and criminal activities against property. And then a little bit on the violence reduction program that some of the buildings in TSHC are part of, and then a few updates around fob security and third party. I'll turn it over to Mona, and Mona, for your reference, we're welcome to, we can share the report on screen if you'd like to see that at any point. I know this committee will have some questions, so we'll certainly support the questions collectively here today. And I'll turn it over to you,
Grant. Thank you, Grant. And good afternoon, Chair and committee members. So again, my name is Mona Batoni, and I'm the Acting Senior Manager of Corporate Services in the Community Safety Unit. And apologies again that Al Britton was not available to attend. He has a meeting conflict. I could give you a high level of the report, and Grant had already touched on that. We did cover in here the safety-related incidents activity that took place in the last quarter for any Toronto Social Housing Corporation buildings. And we also included all the proactive activity and work that has been done by the Community Safety Unit. And it also shows the data over the 5 last quarters. And we did touch on some VRP activity, the violence reduction program, and the security measures that we've taken. So I'm sure you've had a chance to have looked at the report. So if you have any questions, please direct them my way, and I will answer the best I can.
Great. And as you're asking those questions, we could certainly put the report up. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
just start
yeah.
because I think Mona I think because this committee hasn't had a report before, some of these questions may be kind of really basic ones that are part of our education. But I did wonder about the third party. I noticed how the decision is made to have third party, and it seems like what happens in some buildings is you have a third party security, and then if there's an issue that comes up, but they respond to some level of issue, but then the CSU comes in if there's more. Is it intended as an add-on? Like I know one of the buildings that has third party, and I think it has a high incidence of issues. Is that to offer more support, or are we satisfied, or is it less?
No, that's a great question. It's the answer to both. So a lot of times we do attend because the third-party security guards do not have the same authorities as our special constables. So it does appear to be a duplication sometimes of work, but it's because they can't fulfill the entire requirements of what needs to happen. So they'll initiate and start dealing with any of the issues, but then we will have to attend to maybe finish some of that stuff off. Sometimes they do, depending on the incident and what needs to happen. The third-party security guard will take it from start to finish, but sometimes we need to attend for reasons that they can't fulfill because of their limited authorities.
And how do you decide which buildings have the third party? Is it enhanced, or is it like that's what I'm trying to get my head around? Is it actually working to have that? We've had some other situations with third party providers where it hasn't always been as good as the services that we provide internally. So I just wondered how those decisions are made.
Well, it's based on the requirements of that building and the high activity, and if it's a higher risk building, or if there's needs that they need attention. So there's a list on page 9 of where our guards have been deployed. And that's based on, data and discussions that were had previously and where decisions have been made. Some of them were for political reasons, and others were just based on need. So our officers do attend all the buildings that, if a call for service comes in and they get dispatched, they do attend whether there's third-party security guards or not, obviously. But these ones are there because, there could be access control issues. There could be, fire panels that are, issues or, it's based on need of the building.
Tom, did you want to add something? You kind of get where I'm coming from, right?
I do, absolutely, Linda. And I think this is, I think really it kind of amplifies, our Toronto seniors, to continue working, I think, more closely with the CSU, and certainly, I think it has to be our allocation of third party, does need to be really data driven in a way. Like there is the qualitative, but the quantitative is a factor. And I know when I'm at the buildings with tenants and safety is raised, I said it's a finite number of kind of resources around, let's say, even third party or CSU, going through the buildings. So we do, and we'll be working with the CSU around reviewing data across 83 buildings. What is the type of activity that is being seen, and therefore, how can we be more responsive to those buildings as it relates to either the third party or more CSU participation? So we can certainly be more kind of forensic around how those resources and those are needed and where. Yeah.
Thank you. I won't hog that. I'll let others ask questions. Brenda?
Mine's a comment about the third party, following up on your points, Linda. If I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, we've had some concerns about the security service in the past. And we don't control that. That's not our contract. That's through Toronto Community Housing, correct? Am I right on that? So if we have any concerns or worried about their coverage, we'd have to work through Toronto Community Housing in order to address that, because we don't control the contract process.
Through the chair. So the CSU has the contract for TCHC and for TSHC for the third-party security. So currently we have Star Security
Yes,
as
I see
the
that. Yeah.
contract holder. We did have a previous third-party security vendor prior to that, but our contract with them had ended, and we went out to market and acquired
Okay.
Star Security not too long ago. So I don't know if
So
the
this is the
issues
new one. So this is the new one.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that's good. So it was reviewed and the vendor was changed. Okay, so that's good to know. And then this issue of fobs, obviously there's concern about people not giving it upward. So you deactivated a certain number. Is this a continuing problem or is it just a temporary problem that's been addressed or?
Through the chair. So the issues that we've had with fobs was we had to do a cleanup of all the fobs out there because there were many that were out in public that were not assigned to anybody. So we had to do a cleanup. So that was an exercise that we did and we continue to do through audits as needed. And it's a continuous thing, but the first one was a big blitz that we did. And we continue to do just to make sure that there aren't any out there that don't belong out there because it is a risk to the organization.
It's a good report for baseline. I like that. The one thing that I find missing is a little bit of flavor as to almost an analysis. Maybe Tom, this is what you're talking about, and it will be forthcoming. Analysis of what are some of the security issues. I mean, this perception of safety and unsafety, as we know, which may not be accurate, or the figures may belie it. But I'm trying to get a handle on, well, what are our security issues in our buildings? Is it unauthorized people getting in? Is it illegal activity happening on our buildings, whether it's drug dealing or et cetera, et cetera? So I'm missing that sense of analysis of where are the trends, what are the safety issues, and how we need to address them going forward. So that's just a comment to Tom and possibly Mona yourself in terms of analysis of the data that we do get. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. And I think as we go further, I think the other area that I was interested in was also some of the issues around the security interactions with people with health related issues, responsive behaviors, and the training that's in place, and just any differentiation between TCHC and our seniors buildings with regards to that. But that's something that we could maybe get a flavor of in future reports.
Yeah, good point.
Linda, Councillor Crisanti has his hand raised, and then Brad.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, are you asking me to go ahead, Chair Linda?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Councillor Cristani.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I didn't hear it. Just went quiet for a second. No, thank you. You know, good report. I may be revisiting some issues that we've done in the past, but and I think this is good that we have a continuous moving forward updates on the this particular safety report updated periodically. Currently, it's Toronto Community Housing supplying the providing CSUs for Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, correct? Or do we have any direct control? It's 100% Toronto Community Housing that's providing all the security needs currently, correct? I think I saw somebody nod. Linda, that was you. So that
and I see Grant nodding. Yes.
Okay. How is it determined in terms of how many security officers are assigned to Toronto Seniors Housing? And do we know how many are assigned that we can count on today and moving forward?
Through the chair. So, sorry, were you going to answer, Grant? I didn't want to.
No,
okay.
Well, I mean, so maybe I'll just say, in terms of the service, through the chair, to your question, Councillor Crisanti, the community safety unit and the provision of that service is tied into our agreement with TCHC, and it's part of the building and TCHC owning the buildings. they provide the security service, and and so that's for all of our 83 buildings. In terms of how they allocate the staffing to respond or deal with TSHC, I'll let Mona respond to that. So
Yeah.
over to you, Mona.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mona.
So when we receive a call for service through our dispatch center, then they will dispatch, our dispatchers will dispatch an officer to that building. So whether it's TSHC or seniors, they're treated equally and dispatched to that building.
Okay, but I was more
They're not
specifically
assigned.
wondering if we have a dedicated unit that proactively
No,
goes out to buildings rather than react when there's a call, and more
Well,
proactively be in buildings.
Yeah, so we have, if you look at the stats, we conduct proactive patrols. So those are where we proactively go to those buildings and do our patrolling. And we also have our community safety advisors, and we have two seniors, and they do a lot of proactive work, engagement work, activity work. So that is two of our community safety advisors that are dedicated to the seniors portfolio.
Okay, and Mona, sorry for asking, but how many officers are available to Toronto Seniors Housing, or maybe they're not available on a proactive basis to be able to go out proactively? Do we have a dedicated number, or do they?
They're not dedicated. They're not dedicated. The officers are not dedicated to seniors housing alone. They work for TSHC and for seniors. So when a call comes for service, they respond. They don't. Doesn't matter to them where it is. They're just responding.
Okay, so yeah.
so
anyway.
they're not assigned to our buildings.
No.
And yeah, I think we need to look at that a little closer to have more people assigned in a proactive way. I just find that, I mean, I remember the days, but things have changed. I remember back about 15 years ago when Toronto Community Housing had assigned officers, community safety officers, for example, up here in Jamestown, Mount Olive, Kendleton, in all the different pockets of our supportive housing, and they were boots on the ground that were very, very, very effective because they were there. They got to know the community. They knew what was going on. I went on a number of walks with them proactively, and it really made a big difference. So maybe this is a bigger picture and a different topic, but I like to revisit the whole security issue in terms of providing more proactive security while we're going through this agreement and to see what, how that kind of rolls out. So that's just a suggestion there. But I also noted that our calls have gone up, looks like dramatically, 24 over 23 in 1 year, in 1 quarter, and it doesn't seem to be coming from robberies or aggravated assaults. But so what's driving the increase?
Through the chair, it could be various reasons. Sometimes it's seasonal. Sometimes it's activity within the buildings. Sometimes it's guests that come to the building. It's different reasons. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint exactly. We'd have to take a more in-depth look, but it's not always that easy to recognize because there are varying factors as to why it may increase. Sometimes there's a lack of reporting. There could have been issues happening in Q4 2023, but sometimes there's fear of reporting or lack of reporting. So we won't know that there's issues or incidents taking place.
Okay, Mona, do you know what is our relationship with NCOs, neighborhood community officers, with divisions across the city, and how do they collaborate and work with our security team?
They do work with them. Unfortunately, I don't have the details on that. I can get you that information in the next report. I can include a section on the NCOs.
That'd be great. Thank you. And the reason I'm asking, again, taking it back home here, I work very, very closely with the Toronto Police. I sat on the Toronto Police Board for some time, and I myself, I can't direct, but I definitely request through our superintendent, anytime possible, to get at our local NCOs to proactively go into our different buildings and Toronto Community Housing to proactively attend and walk on a regular basis. And for the most part, they're very cooperating, and they do go out and work very closely with the Toronto Community Housing CSU units as well in our neighborhood. And it really goes a long way in securing our respective buildings. So that'd be great if we can get that information as well included in the report. All right, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions as usual, Tom. And I didn't know Fareed had a question. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so just through the chair, and the one thing I want to also remind the committee about, and Councilor Crisanti, to the questions that you're raising, I think they're very valid, and what you're sharing. And there is a recall that the city, right, the city of Toronto had moved forward a CSU review, right? So there currently is a formal review that is being taken place by the city of the CSU, where recommendations will be made. And so, that report was supposed to, the recommendations were, as I understood, was last October, right? So we are waiting to see what those are. And so do those reviews kind of recommend, what might be some of the items that you're raising, and to the point about community safety, right? I know from my time at, Toronto Community Housing, they talked a lot about, okay, how does this current model of CSU perhaps broaden or integrate more from a community safety perspective? So we are quite, anxious to see what are the results of that review, and to what extent would it kind of have a favorable impact or impact us here at Toronto Seniors. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you, Tom, for. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Mona. You can please respond.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say thank you, Tom, for bringing that up, because yes, there was a report that was completed by the city, and we are going to be reviewing it at the April TSHC board meeting. So we will see what the recommendations are there, and then we will move forward.
Great. Brenda?
I just don't want to lose sight of the comment made by the councillor about the idea of designating staff or having staff assigned to communities or community buildings. I think all the research shows that continuity of supervision, continuity of staff helps with safety, because people know the community, know the participants. So I don't want to lose sight of that. And while I know we have to defer to Toronto Community Housing, I think it's worthwhile to think in terms of what our needs are. And I would say certainly for seniors building, knowing there were consistent people that you regularly knew, that regularly knew the building and the community. Those are the sort of things we should be working towards. Okay. And obviously in our current iteration, that's not the case, but I think we shouldn't lose sight of that, because that really will improve our sense of safety and community and building safety if you have that presence.
Thanks, Brenda. Fareed, did you have a comment? I think I might have missed a hand. No, you're good. Okay, I don't see any other hands. I think this is a good initial presentation. It sounds like it's timely also with regards to the report. Maybe in the future, having sort of like a bit of a narrative, like I'm thinking about Melanie, the OACH report, where there's a bit of a briefing. I think we need a little bit of briefing at that higher level in terms of what are some of the concerns that are specific to seniors. I was noting, Mona, your comment that there's two people that are focused on seniors. I'd be really interested in what the trends are in terms of what are our seniors in our buildings telling us about. It's good for us to actually have a sense of it, but it would be interesting to know what people are telling us and how we're actually addressing some of the areas of the city that or buildings where there's more concerns. So this is a good beginning conversation. I really appreciate you coming and presenting and being so open to questions, and for the senior leadership team to also follow up with us on this too.
Thank you.
Any other comments you wanted to make, Grant, before we close this item?
Through the chair, just thank you to Mona and our Al as well, who couldn't be here, And we also have regular dialogue as a follow-up to meetings like this. And we'll have an opportunity to talk about the feedback from today's meeting in more detail there with Mona and Al and the team at the CSU. So thank you.
Great. So thank you. So we will move on to our last item, and it's a big item. It's about adjournment, and I'd like to thank everyone first for coming to this meeting online. I think the items that we talked about today were very relevant to our tenants and our strategic focus. And I look forward to future dialogue. But at this point, and again, thank you, Arlene. But I'm looking for a mover to adjourn. Jim, seconded by Fareed, and all in favor. Terrific. And let's wish that we have a spring day coming up. Have a
Very
great
good.
evening,
Good job,
Thank
Linda.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. I can never.